She casually tossed the nappy that had wiped the baby's bottom into the sea, unexpectedly discovering a pleasant surprise. The baby's feces dispersed in the water, its scent attracting a few greedy fish. MIA, who hadn't eaten for days, quickly noticed this scene and approached. She tried tapping the box a few times, but how could the fish willingly swim into a trap? Then she had an idea. Why not make a tool to actively catch them? One end of the tool was tied to a long rope, and the other end had a sharp little screwdriver attached. A simple harpoon was thus completed. If she could catch the fish, the problem of food shortage would be solved. Confidently, she tried again and again, believing that with practice, she would surely succeed. Unfortunately, the tool wasn't sharp enough, and the splash scared the fish away. After a day's effort, there was no result, and her energy was completely drained. MIA lay exhausted on the cargo box. To catch fish, she needed another plan. Suddenly, she saw a plane flying overhead. If she could attract its attention, she would be saved. Although the hope was slim, MIA decided to try. She quickly went down to the cargo hold, impatiently smashed the TV screen, took a shard, and ran back to the top of the cargo hold. However, in her haste, she accidentally cut her thigh. Ignoring the pain, MIA stood up anxiously, using the shard as a mirror, muttering, "Please, please," in hopes that someone on the plane would see her. But this idea was rather naive, and in the end, she was left with a new wound on her leg. She had to return to the cargo hold, dismantle the TV, find a bent needle among the parts, and some copper wire. Using strong alcohol for simple disinfection, she endured hellish pain to stitch the wound closed. The next day, at dawn, MIA took a simple fishing net and went out of the cabin. She lowered the net into the water, with 2 sticks attached to the top. MIA lay on the edge of the cargo box, carefully tossing the baby's nappy directly above the net. Holding the sticks firmly, she knew the fish would surely be attracted, and all she needed now was patience. Soon, the baby's feces dispersed in the seawater, and a few fish swam in, following the scent. Finally, a big fish swam in, and MIA quickly raised the net. In her dire situation, she finally found food. The story takes place in a deformed country where basic resources are severely lacking. Spain and neighboring countries implemented a brutal extermination plan. Initially, those in power ordered the removal of all elderly people. 7 months later, they targeted children and pregnant women, ordering the troops to kill them all in their cradles. To survive, ordinary people had to spend all their savings and risk their lives to smuggle into other regions. Nicole and his wife MIA were among them. Led by a middleman, they sneaked into a container under the cover of night. Inside the cargo box were many smuggled pregnant women and children. One woman used a drill to make a small hole, making the enclosed space less suffocating. Through this small hole, they saw a world full of tragic scenes. People protested on the streets but were met with armed police suppression. Children and pregnant women were taken away on the spot and mercilessly locked in cages. No one regretted fleeing that dreadful place. Nicole handed MIA a piece of chocolate to save for a critical moment. After some time, the cargo box door suddenly opened, and a large number of refugees poured in. MIA was knocked to the ground. It turned out the middleman had taken over another batch of smugglers, urging them to enter quickly. As the situation began to spiral out of control, a bald man named Yiming fired a gun to regain control. He told everyone that another truck was about to depart and not to crowd. However, when separating the crowd, Nicole was pushed outside and, when trying to rush into the carriage, was thrown out by him. Just like that, MIA lost her only chance of getting. MIA quickly moved closer to the small hole to see where Nick was going. He entered a green container marked 107. Then, they contacted each other via phone. Nick promised to get off and find MIA as soon as he had the chance and told her not to trust anyone. The truck was stopped at a checkpoint, even though the bald man had the necessary documents and explained they couldn't avoid a thorough inspection. The cargo door was opened, revealing all the goods inside. An officer walked into the cargo hold, whistling as he carefully checked the truck, step by step, towards the end of the carriage, separated by just a wall from the stowaways. Everyone inside held their breath. Suddenly, Louis ordered his men to stand inside the carriage while he slowly walked outside, counting his steps. When he stopped, he ordered his men to fire. The bullet went straight through the middle, revealing more space at the back of the carriage. He immediately felt his intelligence was insulted. Feeling insulted, he immediately turned back. The refugees hiding inside felt their spirits plummet. The army here was notoriously cruel, and caught stowaways never met a good end. Just when they thought they would be shot, the bald man didn't order an attack. Instead, he kindly advised them to come out, promising accommodation, food, and water. He said those who took their money and stuffed them into containers were the real threat. Despite his persuasion, there was no response from inside. Losing patience, he was about to order a shooting when a blonde girl pushed open the iron door and came out. Seeing this, he immediately ordered his men to lower their weapons and greeted her warmly. The girl thought she would be rescued, but the next moment, he mercilessly pulled the trigger, and she died under the bald man's deceit. The others couldn't escape either, falling in the hail of bullets. Only the woman hiding in the crossbow box survived by covering her mouth tightly, fearing any sound. When the bald man was about to check inside, a dog suddenly ran out. She appeared friendly, a stark contrast to her earlier brutal and cold demeanor. Just as she was about to leave, she realized there was still a little girl inside. "Clean everything up," she said. MIA only dared to breathe deeply after the cargo door closed. She suppressed her inner sorrow and quickly relayed the message to Nick, urging her husband to be careful. She didn't know how long it had been when the container she was in was loaded onto a cargo ship. Even after the ship left the port, she still hadn't heard from her husband. The little life inside her seemed frightened, not moving for quite some time. While resting, MIA suddenly noticed a backpack hidden at the edge of a wooden box, containing a chainsaw, a bottle of water, a mobile phone, and a glow stick. Initially, MIA didn't pay much attention to these items, thinking as long as the cargo ship arrived on time, everything would be fine. But fate was full of unpredictable changes. The night sea was exceptionally daunting, the waves mercilessly tossing the cargo ship into the darkness. When she woke up again, she had no idea what time it was. She adjusted herself and struggled to stand up. Fortunately, the baby inside her was unharmed. Then, she looked out through a bullet hole in shock, finding herself adrift on the sea with many other containers around. She couldn't believe what she saw. Without a ship, how could she get home? The woman quickly took out her phone to call for help, but it was waterlogged and malfunctioning. Although she had a spare phone, she couldn't remember the password. Due to a series of intense movements, he accidentally disturbed the birthmark. As the time for delivery approached, he found himself stranded at sea. Worse still, the spring-loaded container, previously hit by a bullet, began taking on water. If he didn't quickly find a way to seal this lifeboat, it would sink. He frantically searched through the wooden crates, hoping to find something useful, but after a long search, all he found were LCD TVs, headphones, or clothes. These seemingly insignificant items would prove useful later. Just as she was at a loss, she accidentally found a roll of tape on the ground. She quickly picked it up and sealed the leak. Only then did the woman's heart slightly relax. Suddenly, she heard human voices outside. She quickly looked out and saw another group of stowaways. Although they were lucky not to be discovered by customs, their container was sinking due to being overweight. The woman shouted desperately, but saving them was impossible. The people were lucky not to be discovered by customs, but their container was sinking due to being overweight. The woman shouted desperately, but saving them was impossible. Before long, the container was completely swallowed by the vast sea. Seeing their fate, the woman seemed to foresee her own. MIA anxiously took out her Nokia phone, replaced the SIM card, and dialed her husband's number. But after a day and night of trying, there was no response. In despair, she considered giving up and placed a knife to her wrist. But just then, the little life inside her kicked, snapping her out of despair. This was Mia's second child. Her eldest had been taken by those in power. Looking at her daughter's photo, MIA was filled with guilt and reluctance. For the sake of the child inside her, she resolved to fight with all her might. MIA curled up at the top of the container and fell asleep, only to be awakened by seawater. Startled, MIA quickly moved aside as the suspended wooden crate suddenly fell. Seawater rushed into the container at an alarming speed, leaving MIA with no space to breathe within seconds. Another terrifying nightmare. Waking up, MIA was still shaken but reminded that she couldn't just sit and wait. To survive in the confined space, she had to take every possible measure. She needed to find a way to bring down the suspended crate. She cut the rope, and the wooden crate fell steadily. The woman quickly pried open the container above, only to find it filled with lunch boxes. Feeling lost, she noticed the boxes were secured with rubber tubing, and an idea struck her. She then used the rubber tubing to create a simple drainage system. Next, she gathered all the wooden crates to one side, causing the water to flow to the side without a leak. This way, seawater wouldn't enter. Finally, she used the tubing to drain the remaining water. With this, the crisis was temporarily averted. Afterward, she rummaged through the container's supplies and found 2 bottles of fresh water and some other items. Just as she was contemplating her next move, a sharp pain from her abdomen signaled the onset of labor. Amidst a torrential downpour, she successfully gave birth. The pain she endured was known only to her. Although the baby was healthy, a new problem arose. Without food, she couldn't produce enough milk. She needed to leave the container quickly to find a solution. Planning to drill a hole in the container's top to look outside, food and water were running low, but at the last moment, the drill's battery died. Staring at the hole in the ceiling, MIA felt helpless. She took out her phone, but the cracked screen couldn't be unlocked. Faced with one challenge after another, and with the baby's cries, Mia's frustration erupted. Throwing the food containers everywhere, but Jun's knife accidentally fell on the wooden box. Anyone who's used it knows, Jun's knife has a file on it, so MIA used the file to make a small cut. By the 6th day, the file was worn out, leaving her with no options, and she hadn't eaten for days. MIA was so hungry she felt dizzy, even hallucinating. She filled a bottle with seawater and dripped it near her mouth. Luckily, she didn't drink it but poured it over her head. Just as the woman fell into a faint from hunger and thirst, she suddenly felt water droplets on her face and groggily opened her eyes. She then discovered rainwater was dripping through the hole previously drilled. Seeing this, she quickly stood up and drank deeply, then collected it all in the unused lunch boxes. She had to seize this rare fresh water, as it was her hope for survival, even using a small can on the ground. But just as she was about to open the can, she stopped. When she used the drill on the tin, the machine ran out of power halfway. This can gave him inspiration. After settling the baby, he began his task. He tied a long rope to one end of the tin, held the other end tightly, and pulled down with all his weight, like opening a can. The woman used all her strength for her newborn, finally opening the unyielding tin. Sunlight poured in, symbolizing a new beginning. Yet, upon exiting the container, she was more desperate, seeing only endless sea, their tiny boat like dust, with no hope in sight. Despite the blows, she knew she must persevere for her innocent baby. MIA learned to catch seafood, finding food to survive. From the 9th day, her survival routine stabilized. The modified bottle became a new, convenient water filter. Her thigh wound improved. In boredom, she talked to the baby about the child's father, sister, and the distorted policies. She tore pages from her notebook, filled with survival messages, put them in a container, and cast them into the sea, hoping someone would find them. In loneliness, she gazed at the sea, missing her husband. With no one to talk to, she told the baby about her childhood and how she met her father and avoided war. Though the baby didn't understand, it seemed to sense the mother's pain. Looking at the sleeping child, the woman vowed to live strongly, even if just for a day. That night, her boyfriend called to say goodbye. While fleeing, he hid in a container and was accidentally shot, now beyond help and unable to come to her. Hearing this, the woman tearfully told him about the child's birth, hoping he could hold on. She then placed the phone by her daughter, letting him hear the child's voice one last time. Gradually, her voice grew fainter until it vanished completely. The woman knew she was gone. Just thinking about it made her break down in tears, but she had to stay strong because her and her child's situation was also dire. MIA held the chocolate Nicole left her and fell into deep thought. The next few days passed quickly. The water level had risen to its peak, and drainage was no longer effective. The walls were covered with Mia's daily diary entries. She no longer wanted to eat fish. Now, she had to survive at the bottom of the box. Yet, MIA never gave up on living. She used a food container to make a small lifeboat for the baby. One day, while comforting the baby, she suddenly saw a seagull come to eat fish bones. This both surprised and delighted her. Seeing a seagull meant land was near, but fate didn't give her more time to drift. The water level in the container had reached its limit. MIA prepared to leave the container, but the chocolate Nicole left her fell inside. MIA calculated carefully. Based on the container's sinking speed, she could grab the chocolate and still float to the surface. What she didn't expect was that after grabbing the chocolate, her foot got tangled in the messy ropes inside the box. She struggled to cut the ropes. By then, the container had been sinking for over a decade. Although MIA managed to swim to the surface, she couldn't find her sleeping daughter's figure. MIA anxiously called out to the baby, only to find a massive creature quietly approaching. It was a whale. The whale swam under the baby, its huge body close to Noah, then gently sprayed a small spout of water, wetting her face and waking the sleeping Noah, who immediately started crying. Hearing the cries, MIA finally found the woman's direction. At that moment, MIA was moved by the whale's actions. With its help, the mother and child were reunited. But facing the endless sea, what could they do? Soon, the sun rose again. After being soaked in the icy sea for so long, the woman was gradually losing consciousness. We're going to die. 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 Before dying, he used his last bit of strength to throw a piece of fish into the sea, hoping these stars would attract seagulls, which could catch the attention of passing ships. Thus, he left the hope of life to the child, while he himself sank into the sea. Then, dozens of seagulls, drawn by the scent, flew over MIA and the baby. This scene caught the attention of a nearby fishing boat. The woman urged her father to speed towards the seagulls. Together, they managed to pull the baby out of the water. They were astonished when they saw the child. The woman touched the child's face, feeling it was normal. Quickly, she noticed a rope and pulled it, bringing MIA up. But Mia's face was ashen. The woman tried several times to resuscitate her, but it was futile. The baby seemed to sense something and began to cry. The woman paused briefly, then hurriedly performed CPR, finally bringing MIA back from the brink of death. MIA opened her eyes and signaled she wanted to hold her baby. Only when MIA opened her eyes and saw reality did she realize she had truly survived. He looked at the woman's son to confirm it wasn't an illusion. Only after regaining full consciousness did he break down in tears. This difficult survival experience gave Mia a profound understanding of life's fragility and resilience. On the brink of death, she formed a strong bond with her daughter and felt the wonder and kindness of nature. Now, she must restart their lives, facing the future with strength, always remembering her husband Nico, and moving forward for her daughter, Noya.